Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're exploring a really fascinating approach to science education, straight from the heroesmartacademy Godly Learners series. This curriculum has a pretty ambitious goal. It's designed to turn 8th grade students into absolute scientific truth detectives, and it does this by structuring the core foundations of the scientific method.
Okay, let's dive into this. How do scientists actually uncover the hidden secrets of our world? Well, it's not just by guessing, and it's definitely not by accident. They do it by relying on a very specific, meticulously crafted toolkit. Think of a master carpenter. They wouldn't use a hammer to cut a piece of wood, right? They need the exact right tool for the job. And in the realm of science, knowing exactly which investigative tool to pull from your kit is the fundamental secret to unlocking how the universe actually works.
Section 1. The Glory of Discovery. To really understand how to use these scientific tools, the curriculum first frames the entire act of discovery as a deeply noble pursuit. It anchors its instruction with this biblical proverb, teaching students that the universe is just full of concealed truths waiting to be found, and that the very act of searching for them is a glorious, almost royal endeavor. Impartially speaking, by framing scientific inquiry through this specific lens, the curriculum aims to give students a higher, deeply rooted sense of purpose. It basically tells them that their curiosity isn't just natural, it's a profound responsibility. And carrying out that profound responsibility requires a highly structured approach. So here is the big idea of the entire lesson. There are 3 primary pillars, what the source refers to as the Trinity of scientific inquiry. They are descriptive, comparative, and experimental investigations. Now, you might be wondering, why does knowing the difference actually matter? Well, because applying the right type of investigation is literally the only way to avoid bias, design fair tests, and ultimately ensure that your results are completely accurate and trustworthy.
Section 2. Descriptive investigations.
Imagine reaching right into your toolkit and pulling out a giant magnifying glass. This is your tool for descriptive investigations. It is all about making really precise observations and recording details, entirely without making comparisons. You aren't manipulating anything here. You aren't testing a hypothesis. You are simply answering the what. What is right in front of you? It's all about gathering specific, unfiltered details to establish a solid baseline of reality.
This curriculum example brilliantly illustrates the whole concept. What kinds of birds live in our park? If a student goes out to answer this, they take a notebook, sit on a bench, and simply record the species and the counts of the birds they happen to see. They aren't trying to figure out if there are more birds in the morning than in the evening. They aren't testing to see if birdseed attracts more pigeons than robins. Nope, they are just observing and describing. It is pure foundational data collection.
Section 3. Comparative investigations. Once we know how to clearly describe things, we can actually start looking at relationships. So put away the magnifying glass and pull out a weighing scale. A comparative investigation is when we measure and compare the differences between distinct subjects or distinct locations. This is the exact moment in the scientific process where scientists begin to look for differences to reveal deeper, hidden patterns in nature. You're taking all those descriptive details and holding them up right against one another. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer simplicity of the example. Notice the dynamic between the sunny sidewalks versus the shaded sidewalks. The question is, do shaded sidewalks stay cooler than sunny ones? To find out, a student doesn't have to change the sun or move the trees around. They simply measure the temperature in a sunny spot, measure it in a shaded spot, and compare the 2 results. The natural conditions already exist. The scientist's job is simply to compare them side by side to uncover a pattern.
Section 4. Experimental investigations. This brings us to the final and honestly the most complex tool. If the first tool was a magnifying glass and the second was a scale, this third tool is a full-blown chemistry set. An experimental investigation goes way beyond just observing and comparing. It actively tests cause and effect. And it does this by intentionally changing one specific variable while using controls and keeping everything else strictly constant. The curriculum stresses heavily to its students that experiments absolutely must be designed meticulously to be fair tests, because if you don't control your variables, well, your results are essentially meaningless.
Let's break this down into some logical steps using the source's example of a bean plant. Suppose we want to know if fertilizer concentration affects bean growth. Step 1. We change only one thing, the amount of fertilizer. Step 2. We keep everything else perfectly constant, the exact same amount of water, the exact same amount of sunlight, the exact same type of soil. Step 3. We compare the plant height. And of course, you absolutely need a control group, a bean plant with no fertilizer at all, just so you have a baseline to measure your changes against. It's a beautifully rigorous process.
Section 5. Testing your knowledge. Time for some homework.
All right, it is time to turn you from passive watchers into active participants with a mini homework quiz directly from the source material. Here is your challenge. I'm going to give you 3 scenarios, and I want you to mentally categorize them as descriptive, comparative, or experimental. Scenario A, mapping litter types along a river. Scenario B, testing paper towel absorbency. Scenario C, comparing weekday versus weekend air quality. Think about your toolkit for a second. Which scenario uses the magnifying glass, which uses the scale, and which uses the chemistry set?
So the crucial point is knowing how to apply these definitions to the real world. Here's our answer key. Mapping litter types along a river is descriptive. You are just recording what is there, making simple observations. Comparing weekday versus weekend air quality is comparative. The clue is kind of right in the name. You are looking at 2 distinct time frames and comparing the data. Finally, testing paper towel absorbency is experimental. You are actively manipulating the type of paper towel to test a specific cause and effect regarding its ability to hold liquid, all while controlling other factors like the liquid type and the amount.
Section 6. Science and Biblical Morality.
Up to this point, we've really just looked at the hard mechanics of science as taught in the Heroes Smart Academy Godly Learner series. But the curriculum embeds all of those mechanics within a broader philosophy, summarized right here. Education without morality hurts. They argue that being smart, knowing all the scientific facts, and being highly educated is ultimately pointless if an individual just continues to make bad, harmful choices. Therefore, they intentionally intertwine rigorous science education with explicit moral instruction, presenting the view that knowledge must be guided by a solid ethical framework to be truly beneficial to the world.
The curriculum concludes its philosophical stance with this reference to Romans, suggesting that blending spiritual mindfulness with education brings true peace of mind. It's definitely a fascinating approach that seeks to firmly marry objective scientific tools with a distinct moral compass. And regardless of your personal background, it leaves us with a truly compelling and provocative question to ponder. How might blending a strong moral framework with objective scientific inquiry change the very way we approach learning, discovery, and the application of knowledge in our modern world?